right, guys. Welcome to episode number 2 of Sevedge Sessions, or Sevedge Sessions number 2.
Sev Sessions.
Sev Sessions number 2.
We're having a session here.
So we got Connor on the first one. Connor's right there. We got Wes in the background, and we got Bruce on this episode, who
That's
is
right.
shirtless. I'm gonna be up front. This is for the views, baby. Okay.
No, I just don't wear shirts.
No, we're going back to Drake from the views.
Exactly.
So this is going to be a fun session. So what I want to first start off with is the theme of today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
We got a whole bunch of masculine guys that love to do jiu-jitsu and fighting for fun.
We're very masculine.
Yeah, very masculine.
So.
But what I want to bring this to is I spent a lot of time thinking through, like, what are the students that we have fighting with?
Uh-huh.
And so last night I had a really interesting conversation with somebody. So I had something... Yeah, I did. So I had something personal happen, right? And I had a conversation about how I communicate and how I view specific, like my trauma lens. Like trauma lens being like things have happened to you that have changed the way that you view the world.
Right.
And for me, like my trauma lens, what it's came down to is when I was younger, I was abused, which led to a lot of other things. It was actually really, this was one of the first times I spoke with somebody about like things that happened to me when I was younger. And it was weird because as I started talking more, like memories started showing up, right? And it was like things that I've never thought about.
Like a movie almost.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. So after the entire conversation, I'd go take a shower again. It was like fucking 12 o'clock. Y'all might have heard me have to take a shower. And I just need a moment to myself. I was like, dude, I can't... Like it was bring up memories of like me hiding from somebody because I didn't want them to like to abuse me. It's like literally hiding under beds and closets, like all these fucking terrible things, bro. And it was just an experience. But what it got me thinking about was like I had all these obvious like leftover feelings from that, and like I had to sit down and I was like, man, like how do I process this, and how did this genuinely affect me? And what it came to is this interesting idea of like I talked about the book Crucial Conversations. We read it for the book.
Yeah, we read that.
Like 3 or 4 months ago. And it came to like the stories we tell ourselves. Like that's one of the things. Like your trauma lens dictates how you're going to see the world, and like to a heavy degree. Like the things that have happened to you are going to create biases in your mind. So I literally wrote this in my journal this morning. And actually, before we do this,
let's pour some tea out.
Let's pour some tea out. Let's get some tea going.
Brand new tea set.
Yeah, we're doing this as a new tradition. This is hot as shit, so be careful.
That's hot as shit.
This is a new tradition for us.
Thank you.
Pouring some tea, some herbal tea, because we're both caffeine addicts, or at least I am.
We're about to spill the tea on our childhood traumas and abuse here, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.
Traumas and learning. Let's do this. Is he good?
Stupendous.
It actually is good. That makes me really happy. So I've been trying to like figure out something I could drink throughout the day.
So we're talking about here. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about the things that, kind of in the context of like our students. A lot of them have traumas that in the past have prevented them from doing things. Because sometimes when you are traumatized, you put a barrier between yourself and the world. And you want to stay inside this little piece of comfort. You're afraid to break out of it because, how do I put this? Your self-esteem, things like that, they just get so shot with like various things that can happen to you throughout life. So how does that pertain to what you wrote about here?
Man, I think that what it really came to is I was like, when I was writing this, I literally start. So when I journal, I try to start from like, okay, what am I feeling right now as I'm journaling? And I wrote like, today I'm writing from a place of exhaustion. Like I was exhausted. I'm used to having like those really uncomfortable conversations. Like we both are in relationships, right? I was married for 7 years, and like I'm used to having those uncomfortable conversations. I've gotten a lot better, but the big factor was getting into something so in depth. And I imagine this to where what this ties back to is how I deal with that trauma, and this is what got really neat. And I wrote that for myself, how I cope with trauma is through music. Connor literally made a joke yesterday. We were going to the gym. I'm looking at him right now. And Wes was in the car too. And I think we were listening to like Lil Durk or some rapper. And he's literally saying how he is trap music, how he shot something up. He's like, Nathan, I could definitely see like how you could relate to this from your abuse or something along those lines. And I was like, it's just so funny. But like, it's I don't know. It was one of my only ways of expression because growing up, I never had anybody to talk to. Like this was something to where I was abused sexually and emotionally, and I wasn't even in first grade. Like I didn't have a means to communicate with this. I just knew that I had physical emotions about something. I didn't know how to express it whatsoever. And that, like, we're talking about deep rooted feelings of humiliation, embarrassment, fear, like these deep rooted things to where the only thing I could do to get past them was to listen to music. This is from like 8 to, I would say, like 16 to 18ish. I only had music to express it. I didn't know. And what I would relate it to is that person's pain.
Right.
Like I like we have completely different scenarios, but the pain, the passion they have,
Like holding up a mirror almost kind of.
yeah. And it was weird because I was like almost like really emo-ish, right? In a sense, like in terms like I would abnormally like separate myself from groups, like when it wasn't really necessary.
Self-isolation.
100%, 100%. Like it was just like I felt like everybody was out to get me, or since nobody understood me. It was a really like odd scenario where just I felt like it was just completely unrelated. And so I wrote like in this for myself, I coped with trauma through music and expressing that energy through sports. Like that was kind of like my younger teens. And then it turned into my career. And then at times distancing myself from individuals by creating external enemies. And we've seen this as like we'd be upfront, right? We've seen this as a problem with myself, even in the company, with sometimes, instead of having those uncomfortable conversations, just start distancing that person. And it's something I've worked really heavily on. But I think this is where the theme of this conversation comes to. And I wrote specifically down here one thing that I think is a good preface into this. The decisions we make with how we cope with and handle these traumas, like these habits worked for me and they've helped me advance my career. But they've created separate, unique problems, like being unrelatable at times, aggressive and pretentious. I think like the appropriate things, like you think you're better than us because you don't want to go out and party or you didn't do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's usually bred out of insecurities. Like, so for example, I've thought this pretty heavily. There's the massive Andrew Tate movement that's gone around, right? Everybody's neglecting, I think, the really important factors. Like, why do men act that way? And I think a lot of it is, man, they're broken men. Like, guys got hurt.
Yeah. There's a lot of ignored context there because if you go through something and then, like, for example, you listed one of those traits as not being relatable, maybe because you don't party, you don't do certain things or whatever. But if somebody that was putting that on you, saying, I can't relate to this guy. If they knew the background, if they knew the whole story of, well, this guy chose to be very disciplined because he came from a place where a lot of people don't make it out. They kind of stay there and they stay in, one level of earning for their entire lives. They never break out of it. If you understood that context, you wouldn't say, that person's not relatable. You probably would relate to that person.
Yeah. I think that's like... This is the unique part. I think you hit it on the head earlier. You just said something that really stuck with me right before that.
That's what I do. I like to stick on you.
Dude, that's kind of the point of the podcast, though. Like, I'm trying to find a way. Like, this is, ironically, so I've talked to Ethan about this, our chief sales officer, and Peter, my CTO. I've had this, like, massive worry of dying young. I've always had this massive concern. And, like, if I died now, how would my kids remember me? They have like nothing to remember me by. Like one's 5, one's 3. Like they're not gonna be able to remember me. And I treat this as like a chance to like leave a legacy in a sense and how their dad acted. And I also view it as like, man, like if we can create something where people feel like they're not by themselves. There's other people that are around that are going through the same shit. Like I'll give context. 3 years ago, I really wasn't making that much money. I was clearing over 100,000, but the expenses were so high, like nothing happened.
2 kids.
Yeah, 2 kids. Wife at the time worked at home. Now I own Devslopes. I'm a multimillionaire on paper with that, right? But
God bless.
it's so odd to say out loud.
I know,
just
right?
Be
It's
straight
crazy.
up. Like it's really odd just to see people in here because it's on paper. Unfortunately, I'm not liquid for multi-millions. It'd be nice though.
It'll happen soon, though. You got the dedication.
But I think the unique part is I struggle just as much as any other. Like if you can't find authentic ways to talk about this, it'll never be relatable. And I feel like that's the biggest problem right now. Like the individuals that are making it through are becoming so unrelatable because they're not willing to have these conversations. And I feel like for us to create a form of education that's meaningful and can actually make this breakthrough, it's going to be required that somebody is willing to take one for the team. And I feel like I'm supposed to be that person. I feel like I'm supposed to be the advocate for the individuals that are in pain, that are suffering, that are looking for a way out, and they want to put the trauma that they've had, and they want to find a way to focus that energy into bettering themselves through a career. And I think that's what all this is about. Like, I literally write in here, I'm not saying that my way of handling and dealing with my trauma is the best way for everybody. I just don't know. I just know that from my experience, by taking all of that pain and trying to push it into my career or sports, it allowed me a healthy means of being able to give an outlet for it. The problems were, you're going to distance yourself from other people. There's those there's those external factors.
You run the risk of social alienation because a lot of people don't have these aspirations. They don't have these goals. Not maybe because they can't or they're not capable. But I'll tell you a story. You ever heard of Marco Pierre White?
No.
Famous chef. He taught Gordon Ramsay.
Really?
So Gordon Ramsay's instructor. He watched his mom die when he was a very young child. Like literally watched her pass away in front of him. And he said from that moment on, it was almost like he had a glass covering around him. Sorry, didn't mean to touch the mic there. He had a glass covering around him, and that kept him from everybody else. So all of his aspirations, all the things that made him kept going, he was completely insulated from the rest. And it took him, he kind of laments on the social issues that causes. People think this guy's a prick. He's, who is this guy? I mean, what you're saying is very similar. We protect ourselves. And by going forward through these things and attributes that some people might view as like pretentious or whatever, the way you present yourself, that ambition, it's because of where you come from.
Yeah.
It's not because you're just some fucking raging asshole, like, oh, look at me, la-di-da. You're actually making a legitimate attempt to help people here.
And that's where I think things get really interesting, because we know through psychology, based on people's different traumas and how they react to circumstances, there's fight, flight, or freeze. And it, to an extent, people's nature is their nature. I just happened to luck out and choose a fight mode. Like,
right.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that was like, I did that. Like, no, like you luck out. Like you roll the fucking dice and you get what you get.
Yeah.
And so this is where I think the real work starts. And I think the conversation needs to start. And this is why I get so upset about entrepreneurs that are, you need to become an entrepreneur. You need to start a side hustle. It's like, no, like the process of developing a skill and this process of mastery, anybody who's become a master at something, typically they had an immense amount of pain they put into it. But for the individuals that they're not ambitious, they're struggling, they can't make it out, like, and versus me, it's really interesting that the lens that I've had that I viewed the world has changed so much. I used to view it as you just got to grind. You got to work harder. But I think the reality is I survived through everything with like a survivor mentality.
Right.
Like
I understand that.
What I specifically said around that is like, it was an aspect of just moving on. Like the closest thing I could think about was like something terrible happened. And it pretty much haunted me my entire life in different ways. And the way that I handled it was like, just pick the foot up, put the foot down, pick the foot up, put the foot down. Like, there's no need to look back. We're always looking forward. There's nothing else that can be done about those old times. And I feel like it makes sense how a lot of people, instead of being a survivor, they chose to sit down. And they were just like, I'm done. Like, I don't see hope. I don't think there's any hope. I think life sucks and just we're stuck here. And if that's the theme for life, I can't judge them for that. In fact, it's kind of pretentious. Like, it's fucking wrong for us to sit here and be like, dude, you just need to work harder. It's like, it makes sense. Like,
yeah, because if you can't address those things, I mean, someone has all that going on in their mind. You tell them, oh, work harder, do this, do that. They don't visualize any positive outcome for themselves because they're still stuck as that person who was the victim of whatever trauma they experienced. So they that's all they see. They don't see like, oh, I put in a year's work, 2 years work. I read all these books. I do all this stuff. I learn to code, for example. I go out and I freelance and I get jobs. And then, then my career, it blossoms. They don't see that.
Yeah.
So how do you make someone see that? How do you kind of take them out of that dark cave that they've been trapped in for so long?
I think you have to be willing to live. You have to be willing to live in the darkness for a long time. It's so funny. So I had the entire company read a book called Winning. It was Winning, wasn't it, by Tim Grover? It was Winning, yeah. By Winning by Tim Grover. And it was a book that, like, it was almost completely unrelatable for everybody in the company. Like, very few people like that book. They're like, yeah, we get it. Winning is hard. Like, I don't need to fucking hear this over and over. Yeah, and you worked with Kobe and MJ. Like, stop name dropping. And so the guy's name is Tim Grover. Indian dude. Dad came here from India. The only job he can get was in a morgue where he was in charge of chopping up bodies for medical students, but he was a doctor back in India. He couldn't get his license in the U.S. And Tim would come, he would go with his dad after school, and he talked about this in his first book, and he would watch his dad dismember bodies as a child.
It's got to be a loving memory.
Yeah, like he would sit in the fucking room right there and watch his dad dismember bodies. And it's like, his dad, do you think he wanted to do that shit? Fuck no. Like, no. And like, you know that he had the pain of like, dude, my son's having to watch this, but he probably didn't have anywhere else to go. And I think the point it comes to is the only way you get out is by accepting darkness. Like I feel a lot like this is so cheesy, but Batman in a sense, right? So like,
I see some similarities.
Yeah, like, well, when I'm around like the groups of the company and stuff like that, it's my job to try to be charismatic and try to be somebody to speak with a lot of individuals. And I feel like this is how so many normal people feel.
Right.
Like, they have this part of them that has to be expressed to the outside world, that they're trying to show that their shit is together. But when they're internally, like when they're by themselves, they're absolutely at war. How am I going to pay these bills? I am so dumb. Like, who am I to think I can do X, Y, Z? Who am I to think I can do X, Y, Z? And it feels like it's you versus this massive city of just villains who are just after you, and nobody likes you. Like that feeling of there's the outside and the internal side.
Yeah, and then you have so many outside things that people in this state of mind tend to use for comfort, and then 6 months turns into a year turns into a 5 turns into 10, and then by that point it's too late. Like I'll use weed as an example. I used to smoke weed till the cows came home, and it got to a point with that where I was allowing myself to be comfortable about shit I should not have allowed myself to be comfortable about. And you're like, oh, everything's fine, everything's okay. And I think one of the biggest problems with the entrepreneurial marketing that we're seeing these days, all these different programs, like the stupid bullshit, like, oh, pay us $15K and we'll treat you like a Navy SEAL for 3 days. Fucking nonsense. And all that different stuff. Like, you're selling hope to broken people without giving them the truth, which is that this is going to, if anything, require more pain, but it's a different kind of pain. It's a type of pain when you're bench pressing and your chest feels like it's on fire.
Yep.
And you go back the next day and you do it again. Making these repetitive life adjustments, and in a lot of ways, discipline is kind of what we're talking about. Discipline's huge, because if you don't have the discipline to say, for example, you know what, I really want to learn about, let's say, graphic design.
Cool.
I want to really learn about graphic design. I'm going to take a year to study graphic design. And then, but what have you got from it? You know, if you didn't take that full year, were you doing it every single day? You hear a lot about this with our coding students. Oh, I've been coding for 6 years. Never got a job. Been coding for 6 years. 6 fucking years you've been doing something. You haven't figured out a way to make money from it? Nah, not at all. Have you really been doing it for 6 years?
Facts.
Did you do it every single day? Did you put in the time? Did you do 3 hours a day? Did you send out resumes? No. You stopped. You started. You got comfortable. You got complacent. You fell back into the ditch.
I think this is where the conversation starts. Like, it's so easy for somebody to sit there and, like, when they have those, it's interesting because when people go down that route, it's like, man, instead of saying you've been doing it for 6 years, let's just accept the truth. It's
Right.
okay. It's okay to say,
Right.
guys, I've wasted the past 6 to 20 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've wasted it. I'm in a bad place. I'm not where I want to be financially. I'm upset with myself. I feel like I can't do anything right. I feel like I'm a fuck up. Like, it's okay for a moment to accept that. And this is where I think the survivor mentality comes in.
Mm.
You accept the reality. And then it is your job to survive and think, all I can do is move forward.
Right.
You cannot live on that past. You know, somebody I was speaking to yesterday, the conversation that came to it was, I have a bad issue with minimizing things, and I have a bad issue with just forgetting shit, right? Like, between you three messaging me every now and then, right?
Oh, we message you, all right.
I have the rest of the fucking company. I will just forget stuff, right? I'll be doing one thing, I get a message, I'll go over here. You know, I did something that this person thought was really relevant that I didn't tell them. And to me, I just didn't think it was a big deal. Yeah, I forgot it. It just wasn't a big deal. This is something separate from what you already know. And for them, they have past traumas to where they have experience with people blatantly lying to them. And so there's like two instances of me doing this, right? But they have a lifetime of other people having this happen. So that person isn't going to view like the past 2 instances of me doing it. They're going to compare those 2 instances to their entire life history. It's like, I can't compete with that. Like, I cannot, if you have a history of this happening, that lens is going to take advantage of all this. It's going to view everything for the rest of your life, right? Which will prevent you from being able to move forward. Anytime I make a mistake, it'll just be adding to a new tally of things that you will always look back on for reference.
Right.
And if that's happening and you don't have the ability to forgive and move on and forget, there's no fixing things, because you will always look back.
Yeah, and then like you have people who, if that's your frame of reference, you know what I mean? It's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, of course this is happening again, because we talked about prior the stories that we tell ourselves. And if you're put in a situation where, like you said, you are brought back to, even if it could be something completely different, like someone just saying something to you in a short manner, and we don't consider the context of the other person. Hey, maybe they were just texting while they were running out somewhere. They didn't have enough time to like fully elaborate on something. Maybe something was on their mind. They didn't view this as much of a big deal as I viewed this. Yeah. So how do you think, like, one of the ways to combat this, obviously, is to kind of open up that frame of mind and understand that there's 2 sides to that coin, you know? And we've been working on that a lot, like as a company, but also with our students, because a lot of our students come to us with these very closed mindsets. They get triggered very easily by certain things. We had one student in particular who felt like he was being neglected because a meeting had to change. And we had to go in and have a conversation with this gentleman and tell him, like, you know, hear him out. And that's a big thing, too. A lot of these people have never been given the opportunity to let themselves be heard about what's bothering them. So how have you what have you done in this company to balance that out for our students and give our students the chance to overcome that hill that they keep sliding down all the time?
So I'm looking at the camera for this one.
Look at the camera, Daddy.
I think that for the individuals listening, it's important to understand the validation aspect. Like, very few of you have ever been told that it's okay for you to feel the way you currently feel. Like, you've never been told that. You've never had the ability to express how you feel. If you're a man, and let's say you have a family, you know, you've been the guy that you've had to just figure shit out, and you've never had the ability to just admit to frustrations, right? And this leads to being in pain and lashing out in ways. Your lashing out typically is out of nowhere, just lashing out, right? You might say this is a scam, or like a common vernacular you use on a regular basis is this is a scam. Oh, they just don't like me. Or you make blatant random comments that are just statements on a regular basis. Typically, when you look at people that make comments like this, every single one of them is in a substantial amount of pain.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Like, and this is the part of just accepting it. If we can't accept where we are in our current state of mind, there will be no progress made.
There needs to be that moment of truth.
Yeah, there has to be that moment of self-awareness. And it's okay for you to be like that right now. It's okay. What matters is there's a starting point, there's an ending point. This process, though, is so painful and rigorous and daily. You know, I've been it's been in the vlog, it's been nonstop. This process of me for the weight loss journey, and you know, I'm having to manage this aspect of, okay, didn't meal prep yesterday. Now I'm having to be mindful of, okay, how do I make sure this weight loss stuff works? Okay, yesterday I weighed in at 212.02, I believe. This morning it was 211.6, big win, right? But then I have to sit there like, okay, if I'm not going to follow the diet perfectly in meal prep, then I have to be mindful of every meal, right? What protein am I getting? Like this morning I had a breakfast burrito for whenever we went to get coffee. Now I have to be mindful, okay, when lunchtime comes around, I'm going to have to eat like maybe a handful of burger patties with no buns on it. Like, the shift I've had to make is we have to find a way to modify our lives for these changing environments 24/7. And you also have to accept, like, hey, is forward progress being made regardless if it's not perfect or not, right? Like tonight, I don't know if we're going to go to the gym because I really want to do jiu-jitsu. We're going to go to a different gym. We're going to do jiu-jitsu at about 6 p.m. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go work out perfectly. So there's all these interesting things that are going to get in the way, but the ultimate question is, are we making forward progress?
Right.
And if the answer to that is yes, fucking great. That's the best part. Like, this is why it's a 16-month if for 16 months you're making forward progress and you're doing it, you're going to be able to make a job transition.
Do you think it's problematic that a lot of people that are in this sort of situation, they have the mentality that, like, if this doesn't happen right away, which is why so many of these bullshit programs are able to get people in under the promise of, well, you know, get rich quick. It's been around for, you know, centuries. This idea that you put in next to no effort, next to no work, and everything just blossoms for you out of nowhere. People need to understand that this is time. This is investment. This isn't just 1 month, 1 week, a couple hours, you know?
I think it's the hard part of why they're looking for those things, right? Like, the vast majority of people are looking for that 4-month solution or whatever it is because they feel like they can't make it through the next 4 months.
And it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm already struggling to make it by. How am I going to make it through 4 months with additional bills? Like, this is not possible. How am I supposed to do that? And you do it the same way you've always done it. You suffer, you figure it out, unfortunately, and you grow. You're going to have to figure it out somehow for 16 months. That's how you make the transition to become a coder or working in sales or going to marketing. It's painful. Like, if this shit was easy, everybody would do it. But this idea that it's going to happen in 4 months is so absurd. Like, we have some very talented students in Devslopes right now, some very wildly talented students. And our CTO, he is a remarkable developer. And he's looking at our best students. He's like, yeah, a handful of them are ready. This person isn't there just yet. This person is there. He holds them to a very high standard because he's like, listen, I'm stamping these people. I'm saying this is my stamp of approval. And we'd rather put them in positions like, dude, the ones that are doing good right now, man, they're going to get jobs. We're going to place them in jobs like 85, 90,000 plus. But it's because they put in the pain. They put in the effort. And those stories that they have from now to get to that's what the employers want to hear. The employers are going to be like, wow, you did all this. You learned how to code. You went through hell. I respect that. Like everybody we have hired. I'm looking at Wes right now. Wes bought a course for himself, right? Didn't have tons of money just sitting there on the side. Invested a lot of money in a camera, right? And I hired him. He had no experience, realistically, for what we brought him on to do, right? But I made the investment in the bet on Wes because of his previous experience. Connor, when I brought Connor on, kid had no coding or like social media experience or anything along those lines, but I believed in Connor, right? Same thing with Bruce. No direct experience to what we were doing, right? Did photography prior to this. But I believed in Bruce. Like I believe all three of you so much in the way that y'all have grown. I made the investment on y'all, right? Guess what? Each of them, starting out, each of them got paid very little for the first 90 days. Each and every one of them, right? Connor was paid $500 a week at the ripe age of 15 years old. I don't like the way I said that. The ripe age does not seem like an appropriate thing.
He was
$500 a month. Yeah, it was $500 a month. It was
a very ripe 15-year-old.
It was it was slave labor essentially. Like it was not great. But for everybody, like it's starting off. You take the L's, but your life completely transforms. But I could see how everybody. It's so easy to go in that mentality of when you're in the process, you're seeing no forward progress.
And also, like, these are people that are so used to things not working out. And they're so used to rejection, disappointment. Like, that's their norm. So you get that sort of imposter syndrome mentality of, well, what's the point in even doing this? It'll just end up the same way. But there's this old German fairy tale thing where this knight, he's talking about whether or not he should tell a broad he loves her, right? And he's commiserating with all these people, and at some point one of his friends says to him, is it better to speak or die? Point being, at some point, if you don't visualize any light at the end, if you don't understand that rejection is part of learning. You know how many times, like as a freelancer, I was told no? How many times I would try to go for some job. I mean, back in New York, I applied to be the personal assistant to a major fashion person. They brought me in. I could not have fucked up this interview more if I tried. Like if I was determined to walk in there and bomb this thing, I could not have done any worse than I did. Imagine if I had stopped with that and said, I'm never going to apply for a job again. Because why? I'm just going to fuck up again. And a lot of people don't realize that getting told no once makes getting told no twice a lot easier than 3 times, than 4, than 5. Then now you're playing a numbers game. Yeah. Now you get to a point where you get a yes all of a sudden. Hey, I heard you do XYZ. I got about $2,000. It's a start. You start building professional experience that way. A lot of people are so afraid of the word no, they'd rather avoid it altogether than even hear it. And they don't take risks because of that.
There's like the famous Cell saying, everything starts at no.
Yeah.
Everything starts at no. And that's when you know that no one's going to say yes off the bat. Like no one wants to say yes off the bat. So I want to bring this to you a little bit. I feel like you have a little bit more relatable life than me, like just being realistic.
Yeah, West Texas, Bronx, New York. What could be? What could be different?
The trajectories. Like so, the question I want to have for you is: you're 32 or 31?
32.
So, what does the job history look like, including freelancing, from like 18 to 32?
For me?
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit of a different case because I started working in colleges when I was very young. So from 19 to 26, I was an admin, counselor.
What were you making?
Did a lot of things. Oh, hardly anything, bro.
Okay, how much was that?
Hardly anything. I'd say my best year, I probably cleared like 35K working in 3 different areas.
So you're saying that you're different, but like, dude, that lines up with like the vast majority of people income wise, just career wise. You know what I mean?
Well, different in the sense of like I wasn't freelancing the whole time. I had like jobs, but it wasn't like. But see, that's something also. I remember back in the day because I worked in restaurants after school because I didn't know what else the fuck to do. I had this degree. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. Teachers barely make any money, whatever. And you get into that restaurant mentality. Anybody that's worked in hospitality will kind of understand this. You don't see anything better for yourself. So like, oh man, I'm getting paid $800 a week, taxed on it, probably taking home like 5 or 6. Man, if I could just find a place where I could make $750.
Well, for real though.
Yeah,
right?
You start to think like that. You start to think like, this is what I do. This is who I am. There's no aspiration above this. There's no, it's just, well, this restaurant ain't working. Well, I got to find another restaurant, and like at some point, I was told like, hey, you might have some potential in other areas. And that kind of kicked things into gear for me because I don't know, a lot of people that, again, if you've ever been a waiter, if you've ever been a bartender or anything like that, especially in New York, you want to talk about abuse, the shit that you go through on a nightly basis. I mean, like from getting your check robbed and various tax schemes by the owners and everything, to people treating you like shit, to saying I specifically asked for the strawberry pancakes, and just like dealing with the rudest of rude,
So 18 to 26, working in and out of schools.
Working in a lot of
restaurants.
Schools, going to college,
Making like 35,000 in best case scenario. Okay, so jump to 26 onwards.
Okay, so 26 started. That's when I left grad school. I decided I didn't want to be a teacher anymore because that was fucking misery. I've been through enough.
I've been through enough. Enough with this.
From my upbringing to, all my experiences throughout life. Like, it's just like the last thing I need is to watch some badass little kids for $50K a year before taxes. No. So I left very abruptly and I came out here. I started taking pictures. Of people. Every now and then a friend of mine would tell me, you should do this for a living, which is very interesting because when you're in that mindset of like, you can't see a future, you don't see anything above the station that you're locked into, almost like a caste system. Like I'm here. Some people are born here. I was born here. This is where I belong. Enough people kept telling me, you got something with this.
Yeah.
So whatever the hell inspired me to do this, I don't know. But I locked myself in a room in my apartment for about 1 year and 2 months, and I taught myself Photoshop. I taught myself all different kinds of things. I would set up all these crazy light fixtures. I would bring people over. I would just endlessly, like I was always working at this. I had this job at a brewery, and I told them I can only work 4 days because I got this internship in Denver.
Fucking breweries.
Complete bullshit. There was no internship. I needed the time at home to practice. And I wasn't going to let a fucking waiting job consume my life
100%.
to where, because that's the problem. Is like a lot of people, they get, you get stuck in that shitty rut, and it's like, that is you. Yeah. I know a girl, God bless her, she's been working at H&M for 12 years now. Still on the floor, folding clothes, the whole 9 yards. Very sweet girl, very smart girl, but just doesn't see anything other than that.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. Then moved back to New York. Obviously, New York, much larger demographic and population of people that I could take pictures of or whatever. Started to get offered money for this. Then I got to a point where I'm like, oh shit. Did that for about a few years and then realized there's a lot of money in video. Jew that I am, locked myself in a room, started slowly learning Adobe. Started making videos to market my art and everything like that.
Okay.
And I think
How much were you making during this time period?
I was probably doing like $2,000 a month if I was lucky.
So still poor.
Still poor, but doing what I loved, which, doing what you love, but still poor, fucking still sucks.
but at least, by the way, this is the groundwork that was being laid for today.
Right. It was a foundation, which is a good point to make, is that you are going to go through those rough, you're not going to go to Michael Jordan status right away, If you want to be a photographer and you want to charge $500 a session, which is what I got to at the end, you have to have a body of work that constitutes $500 a session, And then I started doing all kinds, selling prints, selling clothes, everything, as the money started creeping up. But what I did, which I think was really important to this whole fucking journey, I gave a deadline. I said, if I don't have my shit together by 31, we're changing all this. We're going in a different direction. I don't know what that is, but I have to make this happen by 31. Because I did that, I had this obsessive dedication to it. Because I knew the clock was ticking. I was maybe 29 when I said that. I'm like, I don't want to be 31 years old putting food down in front of people in a restaurant. I just don't want to do that. I can't. That inspired me to kind of break away from the bullshit and develop skills that were not only marketable, but just by fucking luck, the new wave of marketing and everything happened to coincide very nicely with what I was teaching myself to do. So then 31 came, I met your ass, and here we are.
Denied me once.
I did deny you, yes, I did deny you. I wanted to play hard to get a little bit.
And that's what's weird, right? So from 0 to 6-figure earner and fucking...
If you want to start it at, like, for me, Jesus, like 28.
Yeah, and I'm putting your shit out there too.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's nice to... It's on blast. The IRS.
I take pride on that. I'm to a decent extent. Like, it's man, it's just the process. Like, it's you don't see any, like, you don't, like, if the journey's from like here to here, no process is seen until like here. Like, it's like flatline, boom.
Right.
And it's like, oh fuck, there's reality. And the reality is, like, that 0, like on a scale of 0 to 36 months, you don't see anything until like fucking 16 to 24 months in.
That's right. And a lot of times it's that first little milestone. A lot of people stop there.
Yep.
A lot of people get one little victory. But that's just the beginning. The first print I sold, it was like, okay, someone wants this.
For sure.
I put into my mind other people would want this. But it took me maybe another month to get another sale. But you keep building on these milestones. And I think that's a very important part too, is understanding that, I don't want to tell people that you should never be content with what you're doing. But there does need to be this sort of mentality of like, I had one little victory here, but there's a larger war going on and we haven't won it yet.
Yeah.
And even now, the goals change and grow exponentially. It's never like, okay, well, I got this job, I'm good.
Yeah.
I want more. And I think that's something that also comes with developing that success, is you have all these little steps that you climb. And it's almost like, the peak of where you're going, it can be anything.
For sure.
Now shit feels limitless, as opposed to, Chris Rock used to have a saying. He was like, said for him when he was growing up, he felt like for everybody else, the sky was the ceiling. For him, the ceiling was the sky.
I love that.
So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like you have to keep pushing. You have to keep climbing. It never stops. You know what I mean? Now, maybe you get to a point where you're like, I'm making enough money. I'm fine here. And that's good. But I don't know. I think like when you come from a place of pain and you break out of that, you don't ever want to go back to that fucking place.
Dude, it's so funny. Again, I had somebody tell me just the other day. I've had multiple people tell me. They're like, I'm working on building like a board of advisors for Devslopes, and I had like a handful of people come on, and they specifically said, I remember the conversation I had with Mark a long time ago, as well as our CFO, and they're like, Nathan, you're gonna get offered a $20 million check sooner than you think to sell Devslopes. I was like, I'm not taking that shit. It's like, fuck that, bro. I'm not taking that shit. I was like, I'm not in this for this. I'm in like for the bees. Like this is gonna be a long process. And I was like, I think that what we're doing is massive. And they're like, oh, okay. Then Aaron, our CFO, kept on pushing and pushing. I was like, Aaron, I'm not fucking around with you. I was like, I'm not accepting shit. Like this is non-negotiable. I have no interest in it. Like this is, and it's funny because there is no end goal for me. It's like accepting. I think this is part of like the survivor's journey. You accept suffering and pain is the journey. There's no end to it. And I know that like I can be abnormally overbearing because I've put that on. Like, for example, jiu-jitsu, there's no fucking end goal. Like I'm always going to have something to have to be focusing on. It's the reason why I know I'm going to be better than 99% of people that do it, except for your world-class athletes who do it for a living, because they do it for a living. But like there's always something to be focused on. And it's interesting. So they came to me initially and they're like, we'll sell. Then I told them no abundantly. Then these advisors that came on, both of them were like really big mentors for me. And both of them said, like, Nathan, you're 27 right now. Give it time. I think that you're going to get more money. Like after you get like a healthy amount of money, they're like realistically like probably like a net worth of like 5 to 20 million. They're like, you're going to be good. And I'm like, I'm telling you guys, it's not true. I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, I'm going to always want more stuff. Like, I feel very uncomfortable being happy. I think because of what happened to me when I was younger. Like, I've never been in I feel very uncomfortable if I am happy. Like, I feel like this is why I love the music I listen to. Like, the core emotions is typically anger, feeling like you're facing tons of adversity. That's where I feel comfortable in those scenarios. I feel very uncomfortable being happy.
So it's unfamiliar to you.
Yeah, it is. Like being content. Like I've lived through fucking just the very unsettling environments for so long.
Yeah.
Where I think that's why I naturally kind of put myself out of groups because it makes me unsettled. Like I can't be comfortable and happy. Like it's a fucking character flaw. It's not a good thing. People might listen to this and be like, oh, I need to be. It's like, no, it's like this is ingrained in me, and it seems great. Like it's good for a career, right? But what it does to relationships is not healthy.
Yeah, I have tons of problems with that. Tons, and it doesn't help that I got this deep aggressive voice either.
Yeah, well, you sounded. I just have an annoying one. So, by the way, I have to tell the random fun fact. That same CFO, he said he wanted to do some financial stuff. Motherfucker told me, he was like, "Hey, have you thought about getting voice lessons?" I was like, "Fuck you, bro."
Yeah,
like,
fuck you, Aaron.
Make me take voice lessons. He was asking and I was like, "Does it seem like I need them or I've taken them?" He's like, "Oh, it seems like you might have wanted to take them."
Cocksucker, who are you to
you asshole? But I don't know, it's like, I think this is part about this journey of learning more about who you are.
Right.
Like for myself, I've learned, and I think the entire purpose of this is, I want Sevedge sessions to be a chance for people to understand how my brain operates. And for us to have the honest conversation and dialogue to open up this fact that it's okay that all of us are fucked up in our own unique ways.
Right.
And that through everyone's path, their individual traumas, there's going to be strengths that come out of it. It's no different than we build a video game. People that come from... This is why immigrants do so well in the U.S. typically. Dude, they have horrible pastimes that they've had to deal with in their previous countries. They've seen real poverty. Like Peter has seen real poverty from South Africa. Motherfucker comes here, he's like, "Oh, warm showers? Yeah, let's go for it." Like, "Oh, yeah. I can have clean water? Like, this is nice." Like,
it's easy almost.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about a fucking baboon chasing me on a day-to-day basis. This is nice.
Right.
It's like, it's something to where the things that have happened to us have caused terrible things to be outcomes. Right? You grew up in a super rough environment. You have your own insecurities and traumas that have impacted you heavily. Right? Me, you, Connor, Wes, all of us have had things happen to us that probably tons of other people don't know. Right? That we don't even, like, the idea of voicing them is horrifying. And I think that if I could do anything, getting people to take a moment to be mindful of what those things are. You don't need to go tell people about it. But alongside those traumas and the horrible ways they make us feel, there's an energy that comes out of that. And if we can find a way to vocalize and feel what that energy is it exhaustion? Is it frustration? And if we trail it out some and find a way to put that into our careers and our education, I think that dark side of us, like whenever we talk about dark nature, like Robert Greene talks about all the time, favorite author, he talks about it being our core nature. And that core nature is a lot of these terrible things that have happened to us or traumas that have been built. Why are we that way? Right? Is it that you're lazy, or is it that maybe you're scared of failure? You're scared of getting started coding and facing one thing just not working within the first 5 minutes of the tutorial and feeling complete inadequacies. Fucking everybody faces that. Connor, when you started coding, can you hear me?
Yeah.
When you first started coding, did you do like a coding tutorial and just like shit did not work from the very beginning?
Yep.
And it's fucking frustrating. You're like, I can't even write hello world. How the fuck am I supposed to build Netflix? Like,
so it's a lot of our students go through this a lot, you know.
And I think the only way for us to get past that is by recognizing our true nature, understanding who we are, and then I think what you said perfectly, setting milestones along the way and holding ourselves accountable to it. I have been in a really interesting transition period to where I'm holding myself accountable to goals. A lot of it's because of the vlog. I feel like a fucking idiot if I don't hold myself accountable. Like, dude, I'm being witnessed to hundreds of people, and it's just
practice what you preach, after
dude.
all, right?
And it's kind of stressful, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like my entire life is fucking on camera now. It's really odd. It's pretty funny because my life is pretty goddamn basic, and now I'm just sitting there trying to figure out like just if this can do anything, provide a source of hope for people who are new in this process. Like that's realistically, that's all I want out of this. If we could be advocates to help people just feel like there is some hope when there is no hope, right? People who are on the journey, they're in between months 0 and 16, and they just feel like this shit is not working. And this is something they can come back to and listen to and replay on a daily basis to know that they're not alone. Their work is doing something. Our memory is we're only gonna remember today.
Yeah.
Right? And yesterday. We're only gonna remember today and yesterday. And we're never gonna realize that the actions of today will not play out for 16 months. Whatever you do today will seem meaningless in the grand scheme of things. You will feel like you're doing absolutely nothing. And Connor's might see it's the graph.
What am I seeing right now?
Memory versus time versus results. Big 4L, I'm a member. Memory versus time versus results. Everything you do today, you're going to have high memory of. Results will not take place for 16 months. And that's just, if you understand that graph, life is solved. Like I think like there's a natural equation I talked about the other day. And the equation is experience with practice, with mentorship. Those three things together can get you wherever you want to go. The thing that nobody likes, and I completely understand, is the force multiplier, or the I think the technical term in math is the exponent, and the exponent is time.
Right.
It takes so long, and so there's no special thing to get you out of the fucking tunnel, other than just moving towards a survivor mentality. I'm going to take it up. I'm going to do something that's fucking sucks. A part of me doesn't even like the idea of saying like develop discipline. Like it's the idea of just thinking today I'm going to be a survivor. I'm going to pick one foot up. I'm going to put one foot down. I'm just going to survive. If you could just survive until you thrive, that's all that matters.
Right, because a lot of these people, and speaking as one myself, it's like, you know, you claw and scratch your way. Thank you very much. You claw and scratch your way through maybe that 4 to 6 month period of unpaid practice.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you can get to where now you start learning under a mentor, you start learning under somebody. Then a little bit of money starts coming in. Then you get to another point. So visualizing that, and as cliche as it is to say, that it's a sprint, not a race. You know, or did I have that backwards?
No, well, you could say it's a sprint to the first milestone.
Yeah.
Like,
I've been fucking up phrases all podcasts long.
I think it's reasonable. Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. We'll say sprinting to the first milestone. But I think it's actually a beautiful point.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
It is a marathon.
There we go.
Shout out to Nipsey Hussle.
There we go.
I think there's something beautiful about the fact of saying, hey, listen, I'm starting this journey. I want to get my first freelance project in the next 6 months. That first freelance project could be $100, guys. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you the amount of, I will never, I think back. Connor, how open should I be on this podcast about, like,
Should be as open as you want to be.
What were you about to say so I know what to cut out?
this might be something we cut out. So I think back, I'll be transparent about some stuff. I think back to, like, when I got my first freelance project, and it was like, I think it was $12 an hour. And I called everybody. It was a remote gig. Holy shit. And then when I got my next big one, which is $750 a week, holy shit. And then the final aspect of when I got my job, TAI, for $69,750, those 3 moments, I don't think, like, I don't know what's going to beat the feelings. The first month I had making over 10K was awesome. The first month I had over 20K was awesome. They can't relate. My first month over 100K, like, personally, it doesn't relate. Like, and even in this room, that's probably fucking unrelatable. Like, that's insane. The idea that I'm open about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got one watch that looks nice, but, like, for the most part, it's not that crazy. But I remember the first month I had over it. Well, this is the part where it's like, it's mindful of, like, how unrelatable does this get, right? Like,
But that's why I think it's important for the people that are watching us to understand that all of us in this company, at one point, were just like them. And maybe you can't relate to the experience, but you can relate to the emotion.
well, man, that's the funny part. Like, the amount of times, like, it's emotional thinking about it. Like, dude, I'm not bullshitting. I remember one time, my ex-wife, we didn't have money for diapers, so my ex-wife had to, like, we had to figure out how to get diapers for the kids. So she had to, like, somebody gave us a diaper that was like a reusable diaper. Dude, so disgusting. It's a diaper that they use, essentially go through, then you have to fucking hand wash it, essentially, or, like, put it through the washing machine.
Oh, this sounds amazing.
It was disgusting, bro. And I had to do it for like a day and a half. And, like, these things are never going to leave. Like, never going to leave my mind. The time, like, I've said this multiple times before. The amount of times where we had to go an extra handful of, like, an extra day without having milk. And the kids fucking crying. Like, it was a terrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is my gap happened so fast. And it's like, I know that, dude, it was 18 to 24 where nothing happened. Like, progress was made, but it was still fucking miserable. Like, the amount of times, again, I was Ubering still when I had a job paying $70,000 a year. I was still Ubering on the side because I had energy. Like the problems I had this is what it comes back to when we deal with trauma. I didn't want to be home. I wasn't at a place where I could focus on the marriage of the kids. Just straight up, they were a job to me. Like I had to be out. Like the energy that I had, that trauma, like I couldn't, like that couldn't be expressed through being around the kids or my ex-wife or scenarios like that. Like it wasn't the same. Like I had to be out doing something like that, trying to fix income stuff or try to do something for my career. If I wasn't doing that, I just felt like I was going crazy. And it was obsessive. This is what I think bothers me about the whole entrepreneur out. People don't realize like what you have to do to get a business built is so insane. You have the questions of, for example, do you want to give people good health insurance, things along those lines? And I could do what all the other businesses do and offer them fucking dog shit health insurance for their entire family, and think about cutting costs at all extents. Like even the conversations in the company, people wonder like, okay, how can we cut expenses? Like our CFO will always ask every now and then, like, okay, how can we cut expenses? I was like, wrong question. How can we improve the process? Like that's the only thing. We're not getting rid of people. We're improving processes. That's how we move this thing forward. And I think that the ultimate solution is this: the things that get you to your first freelance project, the more you understand them, the more you are able to be articulate with them and increase your verbal intelligence by understanding what your goals are, what you're after, and what's hurting you, the better you get with that. I think there's a direct relation between that and your ability to grow in your career. There was for me, and it was substantial. Like the idea that I could sit here and talk about a handful of months where I had personal 100K plus income for a month, and then turn around and say there were months where I made $2,000 while trying to support a family is fucking insane. And that all this happened within a 4 to 5 year period. And like, listen, I'll be upfront. Me putting this out there, it's going to be very complicated, right? Employees will see this. People will say, oh, how dare you, right? Like, how dare you get to make X, Y, Z? I'm sitting here doing this. And it's like, man, this is the journey. Like, if you want the response,
this is how it goes.
Yeah, if you want the fucking shoulders I have, feel free to try to take it on. But like, this is Atlas shrugged in real motion. But the point I bring back to with all of this is, everybody has their own unique, massive traumas that are impacting them, and I think it's so important that we find ways to take that energy, that anxiety, and how can we move it in the direction of helping us grow. If we could find a way to help people make that shift, I think it changes the world. Because
it needs to become motivating as opposed to debilitating.
Yeah, it's still pain. It's still anxiety.
It's still there.
It'll
suffering. Come up.
We're just changing the context of it. Actually, I have a great example of this. So, if you smoke weed, right, you can get the body high. Is it from indica that does that?
Yeah.
So indica gives you a body high, right? The way that I feel when I have a seizure is the exact same feeling of if I smoked indica weed. It's almost the exact same. But one thing happened to me. It was the trauma of having a seizure, right? That caused it to where if I smoke weed, it is not good for me. For Bruce or somebody else that did it for fun, and they're like, yeah, this is a great time. For me, I view it as, oh my God, I might die, right? So it's incredibly hard to make that transition. Even sitting here. So when I had seizures, my left hand would go numb. I can't express this enough. Just grabbing this and pouring tea with it, when I first did it, it freaked me out. People might be able to go back in the video and see when I first poured this with my left hand. I was a little anxious about it, and I sat it down almost immediately because it gives me anxiety, holding things with my left hand like this. I feel very awkward about it. Like even if you look at me when I lift, if you see some of the vlogs with it, and I use my left hand, I feel very awkward with it. But to wrap up for everything, that's the theme. That's what we're going to continue to talk about. The stories we tell ourselves, this miserable 16-month process, that's the entire fucking theme of this. It's not going to turn into a theme of how to become a millionaire or whatever. Like,
because it doesn't exist.
It's fucking nonsense for everybody. Like, it's not meant for everybody. Like, it's not. Now, if we can get everybody to a point where they're earning 75 to 150,000, that's all I care about. Like, let's get people 75 to 150. That's realistic for everybody. And you don't have to uproot your life. You don't have to end marriages. You don't have to do a large portion of shit. And you can find very reasonable balance. My life is not balanced whatsoever. Like, my mind lives in chaotic states. Y'all don't have to do that. But getting to 75 to 150, I can guarantee every single person listening to this, I can get them to that point through this. Like, the confidence I have in that is so, it's so simple.
And just to build on that, I think all these people out there with these various traumas, it's okay to protect yourself, but don't protect yourself to the extent that you never step outside. Step out. It's time for a lot of people, take a look at yourself. Start making these milestones. Start thinking about, what does it look like if I put myself out there? Because how many people get told, they go to their friends, they go to their family, I have a dream that maybe one day I could do this. Yeah. Everybody does that. How are you going to do that? Well, if you never put yourself in the pool, you never give yourself a chance.
Yeah. Man, that's episode number 2. I'm looking forward to the repercussions of this last episode. I'm going to have people ask me about financial stuff. That's not going to be a blast. I'm not looking forward to that. But for all of you listening, I can't express enough how much I really appreciate y'all taking the time to tune into this. This is something new. I think it's something that's needed for the environment right now. And again, look forward to seeing y'all at episode number 3. I'm hoping Bruce will be on that. If not Bruce, Connor. It might just be myself at times.
Connor will not. I will be there.
Yeah, Connor will not. Yeah, so maybe just me at times.
Because I live down the street.
The way I plan on trying to keep these going is, the journaling I do for that day starts with the feeling I had and trying to bring that to the point that what I was like at the start of this journey. If y'all have thoughts and feedback, just drop them on my IG and read all the comments off of the IG that are posted on mine through Devslopes as well. And just stay in the process, right? This is about just staying a survivor and taking this as far as we can as a survivor. You don't have to be thriving yet. It's okay to be struggling on a daily basis. That's what this podcast is for. It's for the survivors that are just trying to figure it out. And I can assure you, 16 months down the road, it's going to be there. That's why I want to try to make this daily, if possible. I'm going to try to figure that out because I feel like I'm indebted to it, and it's my responsibility to try to provide that format where people can come together on this. So again, thank you all so much. That's it for the episode. We'll see you next episode.
Next time. Wow, look at that.
I felt like